Mm, one of the biggest mistakes that I made after going through quite a strong awakening experience. So it was like, yeah, a time period where I was that sense of personal identity disappeared and all the things. And it was also challenging because I was in a very challenging emotional situation. And long story short, ended up in a psych ward. And when I woke up, I was right back in conditioned mind. So I had this glimpse of what awakening feels like. And then I was right back in conditioned mind. And I was committed to the path. I was like, okay, I need to do practice and do whatever because that is reality. And where I'm at right now is not reality. And I knew that so clearly. And what was really activated in me still was this desire to be somebody, right? To be successful. And it seemed like a very reasonable desire. We live in a society where that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to become somebody, we're meant to be successful. And so at the time, I didn't recognize that the way that this particular desire had now been supercharged because I was also reacting against having come out of a psych ward and felt like I had to prove I wasn't that crazy woman, prove I wasn't psychotic. And so all of that fueled it even more. So it was like a double down on attachment to becoming somebody, being successful. And I just went hard out on it. Like the first year after I came out of the psych ward, I had to go back to New Zealand. I'd been living in Canada and living my dream life, and everything imploded. Hated being back in New Zealand. I did not want to be there. And in that first year, I wrote a whole book. I pitched a sitcom series. I did all of these things. And on one level, you could say, "Oh, look how ambitious and motivated and determined she is to like fulfill her dreams." But it wasn't coming from that. On one level it was, but it was coming from this desperate grasping, grappling attachment to become somebody, to be successful, to prove myself. And so even though I was showing up and doing practice and still deep in the spiritual path, that was all happening, which was the very thing that was preventing me from dropping back into and opening up into that which I'd experienced. And then once I started teaching yoga, which was about 2 years or so after that initial expansion, that became, in some ways, the vehicle with which I attempted to become somebody or attempted to become successful. And there's a few key moments. Like I remember getting a phone call from like a women's fitness magazine inviting me to be on the cover as a yoga teacher in New Zealand. And I was just ecstatic and over the moon and I'd finally made it and I was going to be on the cover. And they called back and, we had a couple of conversations. And then for whatever reason, editorial direction shifted and it did not transpire. And I was absolutely gutted. It was like so close to finally becoming somebody. And then no. And then I remember like when Wanderlust called and invited me to present, and again, so excited and da, 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 and I am somebody now, and I'm that. Oh my God, it's hilarious. I mean, I really did enjoy presenting at Wanderlust, and I had a freaking blast, and it was cool. And yeah, it was inherently enjoyable for what it was in the moment, not because of what it gave me, and I was able to open into that. But now what I'm just seeing so freaking clearly, clearly, um, is that the more that I surrender into knowing myself as nobody, because there isn't anybody here, right? There's the thing about awakening, is awakening to what? Like it's awakening to the recognition that, oh shit, there is no fixed identity person here. There is just the awareness, there is essence, nature, and then there's all of the patterns and the memories and the stories and the narratives, but all of that comes and goes. So how can it be what we are? Because it comes and goes. And it's one thing to understand it, intellectually. It's another to have a direct experience of it. And it's been deepening, I guess deepening, or you know, solid glimpses started coming back in again around 2017. And they've just become more and more and more and more. And now it's like it's just so apparent there's nobody here. So when there's nobody here, who or what is trying to become somebody, who or what is trying to become successful. And I'm starting to really feel the difference, because there are still patterns that run, that grasp, that attach, and it comes through. Like I'm sensing it, feeling it when I'm teaching. I showed up and taught a workshop about a month ago, and I could feel like, what's happening here? I'm not teaching from presence. I'm like remembering and in the mind, and it has such a different feel. And I recognize, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to be somebody right now in this moment with these students. And as soon as I notice that, I'm like, hey, just drop back into no thingness, nobody-ness, and be. And as soon as that happens, as soon as that unfolds, the whole nature of the field, the whole nature of the room shifts. So in some ways, I'm having these hard lessons because there isn't abiding awakeness here. Right? Adishanti, abiding awakeness. Eckhart Tolle, abiding awakeness. Like these spiritual people, abiding awakeness. Not what is unfolding here yet. So there's still patterning running and karmic stuff running. And so there's this need for vigilance, for discernment or recognition of what is unfolding. And one tool I find really useful is like asking myself, where am I? Where am I? Because if I'm in the somebody, if I'm attempting to assert identity, right? And I can sense it, I can feel it, asserting identity or being protective or defending, anytime this is going on, it's like, oh, that's the apparent individual sense of self. That that's the construct, you could say. And then I just remember to like, soften back and allow and allow and allow. And so now I look at the last 20 years, and there was so much grasping to be successful, and so much grasping to be somebody. And what I'm just reflecting on is, what was the origins of that? Part of it was because I thought I was supposed to do that in order to like fulfill expectations of my family. There was a very strong thing there around, I need to fulfill my family's expectations of me so that I am loved, right? And of course, this is unconscious, and it's happening. It's just the machinations of the the conditioning. And yeah, this is, oh, you can feel like there's emotion coming through as I'm sharing this right now. And when emotion comes through like that, it's just like something else is dissolving. It's just dissolving. It's kind of like, I don't have to be somebody anymore. You mean I just get to be this? I just get to be me. I just get to be free. And life still loves me. And life still loves me. And maybe that's what it is as I share this with you now. I don't have to be anybody, and neither do you. And if we're on the spiritual path because we want to be good at that or successful at that, or, that becomes the next thing we're trying to achieve or attain, we're just going in circles. And that was me for a long time. And now this is what I'm seeing through at this moment, and what I'm letting burn up and dissolve. Yeah. And I just want to give a shout out to this book, Beyond Addiction to Awakening, because this is really dropped in some big pieces, and it goes quite in depth around this idea of wanting to be special, wanting to be successful, wanting to be somebody. and how it can be a real pitfall on the path. And it was by reading this that I was able to finally just see so clearly the way that that particular level of conditioning and attachment was preventing me from just being where I am, right? Which is essence nature, which is awareness. Okay. It is by Gary Tsu, who's a Canadian. Hey, Gary. Alrighty, I gotta go because I got a client, and I love you all so much. You don't have to be anybody. You can be nobody because we're all nobodies. We're all nobodies in the end, and in the beginning, that's all there ever was. Us is nobody.